So you were drafted into the Army.
Yeah, I was drafted in July the 8th, 1941.
Okay.
I was inducted in Los Angeles. So I went through Fullerton to Los Angeles. That's where we was sworn in and everything, had our examination. And then from there we went down to San Pedro to get part of our equipment, like clothing and stuff like that. They sent us to Camp Walters, Texas, and that's where we went for basic training. We was at basic training for 16 weeks, and after the 16 weeks, they shipped us to Columbus, South Carolina, which is Fort Jackson. And at the time we got there, the division and a lot of the Army was out on maneuvers in North and South Carolina. So after a couple of weeks there, they sent us out on maneuvers with the rest of the regiment. We was put into 13th Infantry and L Company. That was the 8th Division.
Oh, that's where Mom got the number 8.
Yeah.
She kept thinking you were in something with an 8, and I kept saying, no, it's 307.
Yeah, that's the 8th Division, yeah.
Okay.
And we went, after maneuvers, we went back to Fort Jackson, and we was there just doing regular training till Pearl Harbor, which was December the 7th. And after that, in January, they sent us to for Charleston, South Carolina, to pull guard duty and keep watch over the harbor.
Mm-hmm. An airport.
Airport and telephone company. We guarded it too. And we stayed down there for 5 or 6 weeks. Went back to Fort Jackson. And from there, they sent us out to Tent City because they was putting another division in their training division in the barracks where we were. And we was there for quite a while, doing training, hiking and all that. And then they sent our battalion to Fort Sill, Oklahoma for demonstration troops with the field artillery. And we was there for 4 to 6 weeks. And we started back to the division. Well, they were starting maneuvers again in Tennessee. And so that's where we went for maneuvers.
What was your job in infantry?
I was just a rifleman.
You just shot a rifle?
I was PFC as a rifleman in the platoon. And in the meantime, this friend of mine and I was pretty good friends, so we went to done everything together while we was in camp. And so he signed up for Officers Candidate School.
What's his name?
Harold Freese.
Where was he from?
Los Angeles. And he, of course, anybody that had a year or two of college was called to sign up for Officers Candidate School, and then they had to take a test. And then if they passed the test, then they would go to Fort Benning for Officers Candidate School, and he'd come out as a lieutenant. Well, he signed up, and when he did, I went and told him one day, I said, if you pass the test for the Officers Candidate School, I'm going to join the paratroopers. He said, okay. He said, if I don't pass, then I'll sign up with you. So we signed up after he didn't pass the test. We signed up. And in the meantime, that's when we went to Fort Sill. And when we went to Tennessee on maneuvers, we was there for a week or so. And our transfer came in to go to Fort Benning for parachute training.
Did you have to try out for it first, or could you just put your name in?
No, we just put our names in.
And they just pick you by random?
Yeah. when they had it started in a new class, then they called different places that people had signed up and had them to go down for their classes. We we went to Fort Benning then, and we had 4 weeks of parachute training. We had to do a lot of strenuous exercises and physical things, you know. And then
You have to run up that hill?
yeah, quite a lot. And then after the first week, we would start other training, like they'd teach us how to jump out of a plane. They had mock planes made out of plywood out, and we had to jump out of that and make the turns and everything like was making a real jump. And we did that for a while, and then we had to learn to pack a parachute. So we worked on parachute training for, usually in the morning we'd work on something like that, and in the afternoon we'd do physical exercise. And we went through the first week, no, the second week, and then the third week we started, they had some towers there. One of them was 24 feet high and the other one was 34 feet high. And we had to climb up this ladder and up in there, and it had a harness hooked up just like a parachute. And we'd have to jump out of this doorway like a plane, and this harness was hooked onto a cable. So when we jump out, we'd fall about 10 or 15 feet before the harness would catch you. You'd just free fall, and then the harness would catch you, and you'd be on this cable, and it would give you a jerk just like you were jumping out of a plane. And then they had a roller on it, and it'd roll you down to where your feet would just about touch the ground, and you had to let your harness loose so you could jump out of the harness. And we had to do that for 3 or 4 times, I think, different days. And after that, we had they had two big towers, was 250 feet high, and they had one tower had it was like a seat big enough for 2 people, you know, and it was on cables, and they would pull you up the top of that tower, and then there was a parachute on the end of this harness on the thing. He'd take you up 250 feet up, and then it would release, and you would drop down, but it's guided by cables on 4 corners, and you'd come down and practice landing, you know. And we did that 2 or 3 times, and then right over from there was another tower, and they had parachutes hooked up, free falling. So the parachute was open, it'd pull you up there. When you got to the top, it would release you, and you would come down and you'd guide it just like you was jumping out of a plane. So you had to turn certain ways to fall and to have the wind at your back so you would, you know. And then after that, we had our graduation and got our wings. Oh, we had to take 5 jumps first. After that, we had started our jumps. We'd jump in the early mornings, and after the jumps, then we'd go relax and do some exercise and stuff in the afternoons. The next morning we'd jump again. Well, the first day we jumped, I came down and I had the wind in front of me, and when I hit the ground, instead of going forward, the chute pulled me backwards, and I fell on my back end and hurt my spine a little bit, you know. And I was 2 or 3 days that I had a hard time walking, but I wouldn't let them know about it because I'd get washed out, you know, and I wouldn't get to go ahead with the class.
And your friend was in the same class as you?
So,
Harold.
You know, yeah. And after we made our 5 jumps, then they sent us to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And there they took all of the class together, and they, I don't know how they called the names, but they took different names and put them in different companies and things like that.
Do you remember what month and year it was?
Uh,
Do you remember the month and the year? Was it in 1941 or 1942?
No, that was still in, that was, no, it was in 42 when we went to Fort Bragg, and we trained there, made some jumps, made a night jump. Then after our training there, then they loaded us up and sent us to Fort Devens, Massachusetts. And we stayed at 2 or 3 days there. They made us take all of our patches, all of our insignias and everything off, so nobody would know what division it was or anything. And when we was on the train going, they cut the shades over the windows so that I could see in.
Okay, so the 82nd had already been started back in March of 1942.
Yeah, that's when they started Airborne.
Right.
Yeah.
So you came in a little bit later than that.
Yeah, a month or so after that, I guess.
Okay.
And then
Were you already in the 307th Engineer?
that's what they put me in when I first got to Fort Bragg.
Why?
That's what I kept figuring, because Harold, the guy that was with me, his last name started with an F, mine started with an M, but we put us in the same company for some reason, so we never could figure that out, because usually they took it alphabetically, you know, and they take so many names and send to this company, so many names send to this company. But the other guys, a lot of them went to the infantry, 504, and we went to the 307 Engineers.
And you and your friend happened to be both in Company C.
The what now?
You and your friend Harold both were in Company C of the 307th.
Yeah.
But why did you become an engineer? Just that's where they put you?
I don't know. I couldn't figure that out. And I didn't have any engineer experience, you know, except...
Did they test you to decide where they were going to place you?
You know,
It was just they pulled a name out of the hat?
they just took the names off the roster.
Huh.
They just called so many names for one company and so many names for another company. And they just split all of the class that graduated from parachute training. Took all of them and divided them up in different companies. So the 504 infantry and...
So did you guys train different from the 504 because you were an engineer? Once you were an engineer...
Yeah, we didn't train with them, especially. They had their own training program and we had ours, because we trained as engineers and they were trained as infantry.
What's the difference? What did you train different?
Well, a lot of it was, they taught us how to use explosives, like how much dynamite it would take to blow up a bridge, or how much it would take to blow a railroad, and how to build a bridge, and how to do certain things as engineers, you know. Well, of course, we had some training that kind of went along with infantry, but it wasn't infantry training.
Mm-hmm.
They taught us how to use our weapons and all that kind of stuff. Okay, after the training in Fort Bragg, they sent us to Fort Devens, Massachusetts for shipping out. And we was up there a couple of days, and it was all secret, because they didn't want the spies or anything to find out what division it was and what they was going to do. So they kept the train windows blacked out. Nobody could see in the train when we was moving from there back to New York to catch the ship out. And then we got down there, we caught the boat, or the ship, and they had, the ship that we was on had, I don't know, I think they had all of the 504 and all the engineers, and the field artillery.
Was it a Navy ship?
Well, it was kind of a transport. It was a USS George Washington, but they turned it into a troop ship. But it was kind of a cargo, I mean, what do you call it? Transport.
Yeah.
People that ride the ships to different countries.
Oh.
They used it for that before they changed it into a troop ship. So we was on that, and they had the other regiment was on another ship, and then the guider regiment was on another one. And so we left there. They had a battleship and 2 destroyers and some cargo ships, plus can't think of the name of the other ship, but they had them escorting us. And we left out. We didn't know where we was going. Nobody knew except headquarters, I guess. So we went to North Africa.
Do you remember the boat ride?
Yeah, we was on the boat 10 days, I think it was 10 or 11 days. And on the way, there was one time that they gave us a scare because they thought the submarine was out there. And so they had everything quiet, and the ship that we was on, every once in a while, the fireman in the boiler room would get too much coal in or something at a time, and the smoke would start coming out of the smokestack. So they'd captain would announce over the loudspeaker, they call the smokestack at Charlie Noble. So there's Charlie Noble is smoking. So then the people in the boiler room would have to do something to stop the smoke, because the submarine could pick it up for a long ways if the smoke was rising up. And they had one scare that they thought there was a sub out there, but evidently there wasn't, because the destroyers and other ships was around us. And we got to Casablanca, and when we got there, the harbor where we was going to dock had 2 or 3 wrecked ships in the harbor that when the Americans invaded North Africa, part of them went in Casablanca. Well, they had blew up some of the ships in the harbor, and some of the American ships as they went in, I guess. So they were wrecked ships in the harbor when we got there. Yeah, we docked and unloaded off the ship, and they took us out a little ways out of town, and they put us in a bivouac area, and so they put guards out, but they had 2 guards on each post. You had to walk one man behind the other one, because at the time there was a lot of Arabs there against the Americans, and a lot of times they would sneak into the place, you know, and they said they would slit your throat if you was walking duty all by yourself. So they had one guy walking behind the other one so they could keep an eye on each other, like keep the Arabs out. And we was there for 2 days, and they sent. Do
you remember what month it was? Was it hot?
Yeah, it was May, I think. I think we landed May the 10th.
Yeah, right here, May 10th.
Yeah.
Yeah, May 10th.
And they sent, I think just our company, they sent us, put us on the planes, and they flew us up to another little place at an airport there. It was called Ujda. And we had to set up camp for the rest of the division, or the rest of the regiments, the combat team. And we had to put up a water tower. We had a British water tank, and we had to put it together. And had diagrams for it, you know, that showed us how everything went together. So we put it together, and it was a pretty good sized water tank. We had to put it up on a thing, make it tower-like. There's a well there, and they pump the water into that. So that's where we were going to get our water all the time we was there. And then we went back to put up the camps, and we stayed in those tents from, well, from then till
you left for Sicily?
no, we went to another place before we went to Sicily. But
Tunisia?
anyway,
you went to Tunisia?
Tunisia, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, we did some practice jumps and things there at Uja. Then they sent us to a place they called it Kairouan. It was in Tunisia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right close to Tunis. Anyway, we went up there then, and then in July, they got ready to make the invasion of Sicily. So we was, yeah, they set up, and we went to the airport, and the colonels, I guess, over the regiment, I don't know whether they drew straws or whether they was appointed one, but anyway, Colonel Gavin, he was a colonel then, he was over the 504, I mean the 505 combat team. So somehow or other, they got to go first.
Mm-hmm.
And the 504 was Colonel Tucker. We was left behind. We were supposed to go in the second day, so they went in one night, and then the next night we were supposed to go in, but then just before we got ready to take off, we got word to hold up. So we unloaded and went back to bivouac, and the Germans had kind of broke through up in Sicily in the bridgehead that they formed, and they was mix-up or something, so they held us over another day, and then we went in the second night, I think it was. And when we got, just before we got to the coast of Sicily, where we were supposed to jump, they had a Navy ships out in the harbor there where they took the infantry in and everything. And so just before we got there, the German bombers had been in bombing the beach. And so when they left out, here we come right after they left. And so the Navy thought that the bombers was coming back.
But it was the
so
paratroopers.
They opened fire. And then the 45th Division and the 1st Division was on the beaches, and they started firing on us too. So they shot down 24 of our planes, and I think we lost 210 men. And there's a lot of the other planes that was hit, but it happened the plane that I was on went back to North Africa. It didn't have one hole in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you jumped out of the plane, though?
Yeah.
And
so after
you landed...
they had all this mix-up, the planes was trying to dodge the anti-aircraft. They all got off course and everything, and we didn't get nowhere near a drop zone, and they jumped us out, and it took us a day to get assembled back as a company. And we went out on one mission, I think, while we was there. And then they broke out, and they run the Germans back. So we got up. We started going up the coast of Sicily. It was some of them had a few trucks that would take the people up a ways, and then they'd drop them off, and then they'd come back and get somebody else. And in the meantime, you was walking. So we walked and rode part-time all the way up the coast of Sicily to Trapani. Trapani, they called it, or Trapani. And
yeah.
some of the time we had a couple of German trucks that we had captured, and this guy was a mechanic. He wired them up where they could run, and we used them a couple of days. So the colonel found out about it, and he was afraid that our own people might start shooting us since they were German trucks, you know. So they made us drop them.
Oh no.
So we did mostly walking all the way around that side of Italy.
Were you taking fire?
Sicily, huh?
Were they shooting at you?
The Italians, those pillboxes, they would see us and they would open fire on us till we got up closer to them, and they would throw their guns out and they'd come out with their hands up, keep them getting killed.
Okay.
They would surrender.
What did you do with the prisoners?
They had a stockade there. They'd keep them in. So we got them to Trapani. Well, there was a lot of Italians there. I guess the Germans left them there to fight, and they took off. And we got there, and they started surrendering. We went down through the town, and the Italians would come out with their hands up and surrender, you know, and we had so many that finally we'd just tell them where the stockade was and send them to check, see if they had any guns or anything, and send them back to the stockade, and they'd just go on back.
How did you communicate with them?
There was usually always somebody that could speak English and somebody could speak Italian, you know. Because a lot of those Sicilians could speak English.
Huh.
Because a lot of them grew up in Detroit, Chicago, and in that area.
Huh.
And they went back to there, and then they couldn't get away to it. So
You didn't do much engineering stuff, though? On the Sicily one?
Not in Sicily, we didn't.
You just walked.
Just mostly walking, and I don't know, it seemed like we did have one place where we removed some mines.
And what did you use to, you had like metal detectors or something?
I don't know if they had them then or not, but they got metal detectors later and we used. And we stayed in Trapani there after we got all the prisoners rounded up. We was there for, I don't know, quite a while. And we just didn't really do anything, just keep guard around, you know, and we go down to, they had a big kind of a lagoon there. It was really nice for swimming and everything. So we'd go down there and go swimming.
During the war?
Yeah. You could wade out for 200 or 300 yards and the water wouldn't be up this deep.
Huh.
And it was real warm. It was really nice. So we would go up there and swim and have fun, you know.
Yeah, it says here that they seized the Marsala Trapani area by July 23rd.
Yeah. And we was there till August, well, on August the 16th was my birthday. And we was down to the air where they had runways for planes to come in. It wasn't really an airport, but they just had runways there. And we sat out there in the hot sun or under fig trees for quite a while, and it was 90 degrees. And then finally the planes come in and picked us up and took us back to North Africa. Okay, went back to North Africa, and that's when I had my first attack of malaria. Got bit by a mosquito in Sicily, I guess, because there was really a lot of mosquitoes there. And so I had a spell with malaria in North Africa. But I didn't go to the hospital. I went to the medics and got things they treat it with. I can't remember what it is now. And it lasted about 2 or 3 days.
What was it like? Just having the flu?
Yeah, it's you get the chills. No matter how hot it is, you get chills and just shake all over. You can't stop hardly. And that lasted for 2 or 3 days. Then I got better. And then they had another mission for us, and they had us to go out. We loaded up on the planes, and we were supposed to go to Rome. And no, that wasn't. Yeah, that was the time we were supposed to go to Rome. And so something happened. They called it off. So we went back. A day or two later, they called us out again, and we're still going to go to Rome. And you know, Maxwell, I think, was had been in Rome spying, because at that time the Italians was surrendering to the Americans, and they didn't want the Germans to find out about it yet. And so Maxwell went to Rome to get set up, so we could jump into Rome, and then the Italians would help us, and we would block off the Germans. But the Germans found out about it, so they sent I don't know, a couple of divisions in surround the airport where we were going to come in at. And so Taylor Maxwell, he had a what do you call it? One of the boats you blow up.
Oh, an inflatable raft?
Yeah, inflatable raft. He was out. They got him out from Italy, and he was supposed to meet a submarine out there in the Mediterranean Sea, and they thought he wasn't going to make it. So we was in the planes, and the planes were starting to warm up. When he got to the submarine and called in to the headquarters in North Africa to call it off, because the Germans had found out about it. So
they would have been waiting for you.
yeah, we'd have been wiped out or captured, all the whole division. So we went back then after that, and we waited for a while, and then on September 9th, I think it was September the 9th, they called us to go into Salerno. Because the 36th Division had invaded Salerno, and they advanced in quite a ways, but then the Germans regrouped, and they was about to push them back into the ocean, you know. So they got our regiment, our combat team ready, and we went in and jumped behind our lines, not in the front of them, but behind them. And we did it at night.
It was, yeah, it says here on the 13th.
13th?
Yeah.
Maybe it was, I was thinking it was the night. But anyway, we went up the next day and went through these two little towns. One was Villa, I think, and the other was Armaville. Anyway, they started with an A. I can't remember the names of them now. Anyway, we went through there, and we got went up to the front lines, and we dug in for waiting for the Germans to make a push. And while we was there, they shelled us with artillery, and some of the shells went over, and our commanding officer, Captain White, he was back quarter of a mile or so behind, and had a headquarters set up there, and a shell landed in there and killed him.
Hmm.
And so we was up there for 3 days. We couldn't get out to get any water or get any rations. It's what we had is all we could get, because there was a valley between where we was at and where the headquarters was set up, and we couldn't get through to get any supplies. So we was up there for 3 days, dug in, and so then after that
You weren't doing any engineering, you were just fighting.
just fighting then, yeah. And they broke out. The 504 started pushing forward, and they routed the Germans out, and after they did that, then we pulled back. We was in reserve, and we was pulled back and went back to, almost back to Salerno, and we camped there for a day, and then
Alta Villa.
yeah, out of Villa, yeah, that was a day.
I just found it.
Yeah, and so they, after a day or two back there, then they loaded us up on boats, and they went out into the ocean or sea, and they went up closer to Naples, and they landed us in behind our lines, and then we pushed in from there into Naples, and when we got to Naples, another division came up and relieved our division, and so we stayed in Naples for quite a while, up until December, no, it must have been around the last of October, and they took us up to the front again. And they had the American 5th Army was on one side of these mountains, and the British 8th Army was on the other side. Well, there was a ridge of mountains up through there, and they took our combat team, and we went, just followed trails. We didn't have no transportation, and we got some mules from the Italians, and carried our ammunition and water and stuff up. We went up these trails for quite a long ways. Then we got to this other little town up there, I think it's Collie something, I can't remember what the name of it was.
Starts with a C?
It was
Gallo?
yeah, I think that's,
Through the southern part of Italy, and then they captured Gallo.
I was thinking it was Calais Volturno or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, the hill there was called 1017. That we was fighting for that, and we went up. My squad was split in 2 groups to go up and remove landmines so the infantry could come up. So we got up there, and a sniper started shooting at us, and we didn't have our equipment. We just had stuff to remove mines and minesweepers, and I don't know if we had a rifleman from the infantry was supposed to be our escort up there. And we thought there was supposed to be a squad of them. But then, anyway, we was going back down the trail, and we was kind of going leapfrogging back down, you know. And so I went down, and I went over to the side of the trail. There's a little place there between the big ditch, and I stopped there and knelt down and waited for the next guy to come down, you know. And then after we got down from there, this guy that come down to where I had been, he said my tracks in the mud was about that far from my mine.
No way.
Yeah, there's what they call a bouncing Betty.
Yeah.
Landmine, or anti-personnel mine. And I liked that much of stepping on it. And we got back down and went back to the little town where we was at. It wasn't a town, it was just a few buildings. So we was going to work on this bridge down there, and the Germans there was a river that flowed around by there, and way back up there, 5 or 6 miles, up on the side of the mountain, the Germans could look up from there. They could see us down there working, and they had a 88mm cannon up there, and then they shoot like a rifle. And you could hear them go zzz, all of a sudden they were hitting the ground. They exploded, you know. So one shell come in, and we ran. My sergeant and I ran across the road, and he laid down the ditch, and I hunkered down kind of up over him and behind him. I was leaning, there was a ridge coming out like this on the side of the little hill, and I thought from there they couldn't see me, but the shell landed right across the street, right across the road from where we was at, and that's where both of us got hit.
Mm.
I got hit in the arm and in the leg, and he got hit in the back of his thigh. And
do you remember what day that was?
no, I don't remember that.
But it was after Naples.
Oh yeah, it was after Naples, and must have been around the last of October, somewhere in there, I think. So after I was wounded, they sent us back to the hospital, and the first hospital was an evacuation hospital. They had us there first, and then they sent us to another one. That's where we got this bullets, I mean, lead taken out of our bodies, you know. And so we was there for a day or two, and they sent us back to Naples to a general hospital. And the ones that was the worst, they was sending back to North Africa to a general hospital back there. So our sergeant, he'd get up and hop around around the ward, you know, and everything. He said, "You better get up, so they'll send you away from here." But my leg was so sore I couldn't walk on it, and my arm wasn't healed up. So they sent me back to North Africa, to the 7th General Hospital back there.
You didn't want to go back there? Well, he didn't want you to go back there.
He didn't want me to go back. But I wasn't sure about what I wanted to do. I was just doing whatever they wanted me to do. So they sent me back there, and they treated me. They cleaned out the wounds and sewed them up again. And I was back there a couple of weeks, I guess. And then from there, they sent me to a replacement camp. And we spent a little time there, and then sent us to another place, and we spent a day there. And finally, they put us on one of those trains. You know, you say the 20 and 8 or 40 and 8 or whatever it was, the boxcars.
Mhm.
Well, they was sending us back to Oran. And at first, I don't know how far it was. We was just on those little boxcars, and it was really cold. It was in the must have been around somewhere in November, just before Thanksgiving. And it was kind of up in the mountains there. And we didn't have any place to keep warm, so we we had a big can, and we hung it on the side of the boxcar, and took some boards and things from inside the boxcar and set them afire, and made a fire in that can. The heat was coming inside, but pretty soon the boxcar started to get on fire. So we had to dump the fire out so to keep the boxcar from burning. And after that, we changed into another train, and they had coaches with seats and everything else. So we rode on them back. We went through Algiers, went through Constantine, and up there in the mountains. Well, they grew a lot of oranges up in that area. So we got some oranges from the Arabs and had them to eat. And we got Oran, and I don't know if it's we got a pass from camp, or whether we got a pass from the train, because the train was laying over. And me and this other guy from the 504, we got together, and we was going around through the town trying to see what it was like, you know. And we got up there, and this one area, and it was all black. Couldn't see nothing hardly, just kind of a shadow here and there. And we come to find out it was a restricted area from the American soldiers wasn't supposed to be in that area. They said, no wonder we hadn't got shot or knifed or something. Anyway, we owned the camp then, and we was there Thanksgiving Day. They fixed a big turkey dinner for everybody. I don't know how long they'd had the turkeys, but anyway, that night, everybody started getting sick.
Oh no.
They're getting diarrhea and vomiting. They had a tent over what they call a latrine. There's about 10 or 12 holes on each side of this row, you know. I got up there and every one of those holes was filled. There's a guy standing around. I couldn't wait, so I went out there in the field and dug a little hole.
Because you got sick?
Yeah, I had diarrhea. I went 2 or 3 times that night. And after that, we went, they got us ready. They was going to send us back to Italy. They put us on a Liberty ship. And so we went up the coast from Oran up to Missouri, out from Tunisia. And we started from there. We started to cross the Mediterranean to Italy. We got about 3 miles out, and this storm came up. And oh, I mean, it was a storm. I'd never been in something like that. The ship was just rolling, you know, it almost dipping water on both sides. Every time it rolled over, this big wave would come, and everybody on the ship was getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow or other, I didn't get sick. I almost did once, but I didn't get sick. Anyway, we went on back to Naples, and they took us out. I was just a little bit out of town, and they had the sea company was bivouacked out there, and just before Christmas. And so right after Christmas, we had our Christmas dinner and everything.
So you weren't on the lines during Christmas?
No, the company had been up on the line just before Christmas while I was in the hospital. They had been up in the Ventura or
Volturno.
Yeah, they was up in that area in the mountains, and so January they called us out and they was briefing us on going into ANZIO, but they was gonna first they wanted to have us jump in there behind the line, you know, and cut off the roads. But something happened. They changed their mind, so they sent us on as regular infantry. So we went on LSTs, as LSSs. Yeah, LST, Landing Shore Troops. And we went on them, went up the coast. Started out at night. We got up there just about daylight.
Do you remember the date?
Yeah, December or January 22nd. We went round to they have what they call a Mussolini Canal.
Mm-hmm.
And we went out for, and then the Germans stopped the drive because he didn't have enough troops to hold the lines any farther. So we set up a defensive line on that Mussolini Canal, and we'd go up there at night a lot of times and lay minefields.
That was the engineers.
Yeah, the engineers, and the infantry was out on the line, and we was back in kind of reserve. So we started to blow one bridge up there at one time, and we got stopped. So we went back, and the next day or two, they took us up a different way to another bridge that we was going to blow, and we was carrying the explosive with us. I had I think it was a 50-pound box of TNT that I was carrying on my shoulder, and we got, and the sergeant was out on the lead of our platoon, and he sneaked up on these two Germans in a foxhole, and they didn't expect anybody around, so they wasn't on guard. So he captured them and brought them back to the company, and then he went back. We went up a little farther, and there was a big ditch that ran around on the outside way, 100 yards from the big canal, and we ran into the Germans, and they opened fire on us, and I had that 50-pound TNT on my shoulder, and I hit the ground, and I set that down in front of me, and I was laying flat on the ground. I pushed it up as far as I could reach in case it hit it, but it wouldn't have done any good if it hit it. It still blowed me. And so I got a little slack in the firing, and I rolled off into that ditch and got up. We had the firefight there for about half an hour or so.
So you had your rifle too?
Yeah.
And the TNT.
Yeah, I had the rifle slung on my shoulder, and they killed some of the Germans and captured a couple of three of them, and we was there for a little while, and went around, and they thought they was going to make a counterattack around the other side, because this ditch went around where we was at and around 100 yards over there, and then it went back down toward the canal. And so we went over there to protect that area, and the Germans didn't try to come through, so we was there for a couple of hours, and nothing happened, so we went back. And another time we went over to, oh yeah, I was expecting the German to counterattack, so we went up on this canal, big bank on each side of it, and we went up on the first bank and dug in and waited till the Germans didn't attack. So then they sent us back, and then every night or two we would go out and lay some mines in different areas in case they made an attack. You know, they'd have to come through the minefield. We did that. We was there from January 22nd to March the 22nd. And
wow.
2 months was practically on the front lines. For 60 days we was up there. We was out laying mines, and one time they thought they'd make a counterattack, so we was up on the line with it, but they didn't materialize. So on March the 22nd, they took us back off and sent us back to Naples, and we was in Naples for I don't know, for a couple of weeks or 3, I guess. And then in April, we left Naples to go to England, because the rest of the division had already gone except the 504 combat team. And we landed in Liverpool, England on sometime in May. And they took us down to a place called Leicester, England. And that's where the rest of the division was, in and around that area. They wasn't all right in Lancaster, but they're around that area. And so we was there and did some engineering projects. We didn't do any work hardly. We just more or less having recuperation time. And we would go out on little problems and different things, you know, things that might happen. And so in June is when we went to into France, Normandy. But the 504 combat team didn't go because we had just got back from ANZIO just a month before that. And so they left us back in reserve, and the rest of the division went in on D-Day. And we stayed there until sometime in June, last of June I think, they thought they was going to have us to go in as reinforcements. So they took us to the airport, got us ready to leave for France. Then they got word that everything is kind of quieting down, so they didn't need us. So we went back to our barracks, and after a little while, they called us out again, and they was tell us at the airport and get ready to leave. They was going to send us into southern France, because the 7th Army was going to invade southern France there. So they wanted us to go in, the paratroopers in there. And then something happened, they changed their mind. They sent they had I don't know if it was a whole division or just a regiment of black paratroopers in Italy. So instead of sending us, they sent them in ahead of the 7th Army. So we was there then until September 44, and then we went into Holland. And we done a little fighting in there, and then they wanted to capture the bridge at Nijmegen. So they took...
Do you remember when you jumped in Holland?
September 17th, Sunday. So we went up to Nijmegen. There's the big river there. Can't remember if it's the Wall or the Marsh.
The Wall.
Wall. And so they wanted the engineers to take the infantry across in boats. The British had brought up some canvas boats, and they would hold about a squad in each boat, I guess. So they took 3 engineers to each boat, and as we're going over, the infantry would do the rowing, and when we got over there, we would take the boat back and pick up another group, you know. So the first trip over, we was on our way back, and one of the men in my squad, and my 3 men, got hit with a bullet, and so we left him back and took another boatload across, got over there and come back, and I still can't remember what happened to the other guy, but I don't know if he got shot or what happened, but anyway, he wasn't in the boat when they took another group over. So we got over there and they unloaded, and I was in the boat by myself. So I had to row that boat back across by myself. And the water was really swift. And by myself, I couldn't go straight across because it kept pushing me downstream. And I wound up about 50 yards down from where I was supposed to land. Then they had got some guys down there and pulled the boat back up to where we were supposed to be. But that was my 3rd trip across. And that just about took care of all of the infantry getting across. Well, the other boats was doing the same thing, or some of them was, but some of them got lost in the, and I lost 3 men out of my squad in that crossing.
You remember their names?
Yeah, well, one of them was named Wood. Can't remember his first name, and then the other one was what was his? O'Passage. Bob O'Passage. He was from Wyoming or Montana. The other kid, Woods, he was new in the company. It was his first combat, and when I picked men, I had to pick the men in my squad to assign them to different boats.
Were you a sergeant?
Yeah, that's when I just got to be sergeant. And so I picked 3 men for each boat, and afterwards he come to me and he said, "Can't you get me in your boat?" He said, "I want to go with you." And I told him, "No," I said, "I've already got everything signed now. You'll have to just go with the guys you're with." I said, "They're good men." And it went on, and that's when he got killed on the trips across.
Do you remember how many boats started out?
26, I think. It was
Yeah.
26 boats they had.
This guy in this book said 33, but everybody else says 26. Do you know how many landed? All 3 trips?
No, I don't know how many got across the first trip.
No, on all 3. Do you know how many boats did all 3 trips?
There was one boat, they said they made 5 trips across, but I don't know who it was. I read about it later, but I don't remember hearing about it before. That one boat made 5 trips across, but
Yeah, because they said in all the stuff I've read, it said that only 5 boats made all 3 trips.
Oh. I don't know how many men the company lost. I can't remember if I ever heard or not, but I know my squad lost 3.
They said 200.
Oh, the company?
Yeah. Does that sound right?
Sounds about right.
About half?
No, they couldn't have lost 200 because this company only had a little over 200 men in it.
Yeah, it says
200 killed or?
200 casualties. I don't know.
Well, that maybe they meant the regiment.
Oh, okay.
Probably.
Yeah, the whole 504th.
Yeah.
So what were you doing when the boats were going across? Were you just shooting at the Germans sitting up on the bridge?
I was going right across with it.
You were paddling?
And paddle back.
Yeah.
Going over, the infantry would paddle over. And when they emptied out, then we had to take the boats back across and pick up some more.
Did you paddle with a paddle, or did you have to use your rifle?
Oh, they still had the paddles in there. Had the one at least the last trip. I don't know if there was any more left or not. A lot of them lost their paddles, I know that. A lot of the boats got sunk on the way, and I'm not sure about this, but there was one boat that I read in one of the books that somebody wrote later about the crossing. That said there was one of the engineers in the boat that got killed, and he fell in the boat, and this lieutenant of the infantry dumped him over into the water. Instead of letting them bring him back to shore, they dumped him under the water.
Really?
Yeah.
You're not supposed to do that.
Well,
no.
I wouldn't think that would be a good thing to do. But anyway, he, I'm not sure if it was one of the guys in my squad or not, but one of them got killed, and he was missing in action. I'm just wondering if that's what it was.
So
and
then,
after that, we went back and went out a couple of times on reconnaissance, and then I got malaria again, and I went to the hospital, and they said because I'd had malaria, that was the 5th time then that I had it. So they was going to send me back to England and put me in limited service, because they thought, I guess it's also it was costing them too much for me to go to the hospital, then come back, and then go back again with malaria again. So they put me at limited service and sent me back to England. And I was in the replacement depot there for the rest of the time, training. It was training other men in Air Force ground crews and dock workers and ordnance men and signal corps people and things like that. We was giving them infantry training, and we were shipping them to France. That's just about the time the Battle of the Bulge. So we'd sent 2 or 3 companies that we had trained over there. That's about it for me. I didn't see any more combat after that.
so you remember jumping out of the airplanes?
Oh yeah.
Well, you did 3 of them, right?
Yeah, 3 jumps, yeah. The one in Holland, wasn't a bad jump. It was a real nice sunny day, because we left England flying over, and the clouds was low, so we got up above the clouds, and I looked out the window, and I'd never seen such a pretty sight. The cloud, just puffy little clouds all over, just solid, and the sun was shining on the top of them. And I never seen a more beautiful sight, I don't think, in my life than that. When we got into Holland and jumped, just after we hit the ground, I heard rifle fire, machine gun fire, but I never did see the Germans.
Oh.
And I know some of the gliders was coming in the same field we was jumping in, and they was turning over, hitting, sometimes nose down, and they'd flip over.
Did you know this guy, Private John Towle, who won the Medal of Honor?
Pal?
Yeah, apparently he came out of a foxhole with a anti-tank missile, and you don't know him?
No, I didn't know him. He was probably in the infantry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when you were an engineer, did you jump out of the airplane with different stuff than the infantry guys?
Yeah, we jumped out with, first jump we made, we jumped out with TNT.
In Sicily.
Yeah, in Sicily. We strapped 6-pound bag of TNT on our legs. And then we had equipment chutes that we packed landmines, anti-tank mines, and ammunition and explosives and all that stuff. We packed in those bags, those equipment chutes. And we put, I think there was three or four chutes on the, or bundles on each plane. Because I know when we was in Sicily, the next morning after we had jumped, there was only one of the bundles right close to where we jumped. So we went out the next morning to go look for the others, and there was a little hill there. It was all smooth. There was no trees or nothing on it. And we was going around up there, this German fighter plane come down. There's kind of a little canyon there. And he come down there and he turned about, well, it couldn't have been over 100 yards right in front of me. And I was afraid that he was going to see me and come back and start strafing, you know. But he just flew right around the mountain, right around the edge there, and went over the hill.
Didn't want to waste his time, or?
I don't know. They didn't see me or what, but I could see him just as plain as anything. And I didn't think fast enough to take my rifle off and shoot at him. But then we went on over the hill there, and we found the other 2 or 3 equipment chutes over there full of stuff. And we went and got a horse and brought it over there and put one chute on it. It was pretty heavy, and we was going to put the other one on it, and that horse just
Oh yeah?
sank down to his knees. So we had to take one of them off and just carried one. We carried the others back ourselves.
Oh man. Wow. What about the night jump in Salerno? Why do they call that the oil drum? They keep calling the oil drum drop. Why do they call it that?
The what?
The Salerno, they call the oil drum drop.
Beats me.
Oh, that's what they keep.
Oh. Yeah, maybe that was, they had these oil drums out there on beside the runways for the planes to be guided in so they could drop us there. They had them lit.
Oh yeah, because it was at night.
Yeah. It was,
okay.
It was behind our own line, so it wasn't in front of them. That's the reason they had it lit up for us. Other than that, when you jumped at night, you didn't have no lights or nothing.
Right. So you didn't have to go to the Battle of the Bulge. That was good.
No, I was in England at the time.
Yeah. That was horrible.
Yeah, sure was.
Whatever happened to your friend that...
He, after I left, I don't know how long afterward, but he was a kind of musician. He played the saxophone, and he transferred to the band, 82nd Division Band, and he spent the rest of the time with the band. And
So how many... Was he with you in the combat?
yeah, he jumped at the same time I did, except when we jumped at Salerno, his platoon was the first platoon, and they took them, and there was a battalion of 509 that they had went over as a regiment, but in Africa they got beat down. Somebody said it was only a battalion left of the 509. The rest of them was all killed or captured or something. So they kept them as a unit, and they sent them and our one platoon out of our company way up behind the lines, back of Naples, and they jumped in there. And some of the guys got killed, and some of them got wounded, some of them got captured. But he was up there, I don't know how many days, and he'd got separated from the rest of the company, or the rest of the platoon, and he could speak a little bit of Italian, not much, but he hid out for 2 weeks, I think, or something like that, before he got back to our lines.
Wow.
But we was in Naples at the time. We bivouacked there, and somebody come from the company headquarters and told me that about him. They thought he was captured or killed, and because it had been almost 2 weeks since they'd jumped in there. I said, nah. I said, he'll come in. And about just a few days after that, he come walking into our area.
Is he still alive?
Oh yeah.
Today?
I guess. I don't know. I haven't heard from him since. When not too long after I got out, he come out to La Harbor to see me. And we went to Santa Anita horse races a couple of times. And I seen him, well, I guess the last time I seen him, we went to the races and then went back to over around where he lived in East LA, with 85th and something. And he and I went out beer drinking. And I left him then. I never seen him anymore.
You never talked to him on the phone?
No, I didn't have his phone. No, we didn't have a phone. I don't know if he had one or not.
Huh.
But one time, quite a long time, it was after I got married. But I seen a thing in the paper about, it had his name in there, that he had got married and his wife had had twins in the hospital down LA, and I don't know what it was, that something happened that they put it in the paper about the twins, you know, that one of them was something wrong with it. But I didn't have his new address, so I wrote to where his mom lived and told him, give me my address and everything, but I never did hear from him anymore. So I don't know what happened to him. He's still.
How did you make sergeant?
What?
How did you make sergeant?
Well, the sergeant got killed and I made.
Do you remember his name?
Well, the first time we had the sergeant was his name. When we was in Naples, they drew some names from each company, I think, the guys to let them go home because a certain length of time over there, you know. So he was one of the first ones to be sent back to the States. And then another guy that was made corporal while I was in the hospital, made him corporal in my place in the company, in the platoon, or in the squad. And at ANZIO, when the first sergeant left, they made him sergeant. And we was in Holland then, and I can't remember if he got wounded or something and went back to the hospital. So we was bivouacked there, and somebody come up to my tent where I was sleeping and said, the captain wants to see you. Oh, what have I done now?
Captain who?
Huh?
What was the captain's name?
Captain Harris. So I went up to his tent and said a few words, told him I was reporting as ordered or as requested or something. And he said a few words and he said, a lot of people call me Smiley then. And so he said, that's some news for you, Sergeant Smiley. And he said, I mean McPherson. And he had just promoted me to sergeant. I didn't know it. So I thanked him. I told him I appreciated his confidence in me and I hoped I could do the job for him. And he said, well, you can, because I have confidence in you. But I wasn't there very long after that. I got
Malaria.
Yeah, but
Hmm.
then I got malaria again while I was back in England.
What about after the war?
Never did bother me anymore. That was the last time it bothered me was while I was in England.
Hmm.
So if I'd went back to the company, I'd have had to be sent back again if I'd.
Yeah. It's a good thing you didn't go to the Battle of the Bulge, though. That was cold.
Yeah, I know.
Hmm.
One time I thought about trying to go back to the company, you know, and I didn't know how to go about it. I wrote to the captain of my company, wrote him a letter and told him I'd like to come back if he could pull some strings or something. I never did hear from him, so if I'd been smart enough, I'd have went to the general that was over the camp there, replacement center. I went to him and had to see if he got the doctors to release me to go back, but I wasn't intelligent enough, or maybe I was dumb enough not to do it.
Yeah.
Because if I'd went back, no telling what had happened.